What if I told you modern capitalism wasn't shaped by governments, but by three men? You are not part of the financial system. You are inside it, and it was never built for you. Three men shaped the system you live under: Rockefeller, Rothschild, Morgan. And once you see how they built it, you won't see the world the same way again. Each of them solved a different problem, not small problems, system-level problems. And together, they built the architecture of modern capitalism. Rockefeller mastered scale. The Rothschild family built networks across nations. And J.P. Morgan learned how to coordinate survival. Three problems, three solutions, one system. But it didn't start with a system. It started with a weakness. Their success wasn't accidental. It came from how they solved problems others couldn't. Enter Rockefeller. Scale. There are moments we praise his intelligence and foresight, and at other moments we question his ruthlessness and disregard for ethical boundaries, because scale has a cost. Rockefeller was a man whose personal fortune, adjusted to today's value, exceeded the combined wealth of modern billionaires such as Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg. The significance of that wealth was not the number itself. It was control. It was the level of influence it created. When monopolies like Standard Oil reach extreme wealth, they can become powerful enough to challenge governments. At that level of wealth, influence becomes political. They don't directly choose the president, but they can shape who has a real chance to win. Power doesn't disappear. It hides in plain sight, in whom gets funded, who gets amplified, and who never gets heard at all. Men like Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Morgan didn't just build businesses, they operated at a scale where money began to shape politics. They funded campaigns. They built relationships with those in power. And over time, that influence extended further into media, into lobbying, and into the system itself. And once that government comes to power, it cannot really be independent from those who helped it get there. Because dependence doesn't vanish after elections, it just becomes less visible. By the time power becomes visible inside a government, which is the institution people trust most, influence has already done its job. That's how scale becomes invisible. And you, as a voter, listen to debates. You follow the news. You try to learn about the candidates through campaigns. You think, you weigh your options. You try to decide who would truly represent you. What a futile and innocent effort. Because you're never aware of one thing. The choice has already been made. It was chosen long before you walk into that voting booth. You're not choosing. You're legitimizing the one who was already chosen. And still, you hope the government will protect your way of living. Because once you're inside the network, there is no neutral ground. But this didn't happen by accident. Rockefeller had a strategy. In the late 19th century, industry expanded at extraordinary speed in the USA. Railroads stretched across continents. Factories multiplied. Production accelerated. But speed without structure creates collapse. John D. Rockefeller, through Standard Oil, demonstrated something radical for his time. Efficiency through consolidation. They call it efficiency, but it really means concentration of power. Fewer players controlling more, fewer players, bigger power. He competed with the other oil companies and railroad companies in every way one could imagine and overcame them, leaving them no other choice. He didn't just win, he absorbed them. By the time he was 40, he owned 90% of the American oil industry. He reorganized the industry itself. By integrating production, transportation, refining, and distribution into a single coordinated system, he reduced waste, stabilized supply, and controlled pricing. Control replaced chaos. Scale became power. For the first time, a corporation could influence an entire industry through size alone. Oil could be refined in Cleveland, but capital had to move across continents. Moving capital across borders required something different, something faster than industry. And that's where something new emerged, a network. Enter Rothschild network. Long before digital transfers, a financial network was already taking shape in Europe, not through machines, but through trust. Trust became infrastructure. The father, Mayer Rothschild, sent his 5 sons each to a major city in Europe. The Rothschild family built a system connecting major financial centers: London, Paris, Vienna, Frankfurt, Naples. Through brothers positioned in these cities, they created something new. A network where information, capital, and trust moved together. Not just money, information, timing. The real advantage was never just money. It was the network. Access to information before it becomes public. Signals of market shifts before they fully unfold. Political decisions before they reach the headlines. Because everyone eventually gets the same information. But in finance, timing is everything. And timing creates advantage. And even a small difference in time can create massive advantage. Today, these networks are a big part of the financial system. Inside these networks, trust replaces uncertainty. The biggest deals are not made in public. They happen in rooms you can't see, between people who already know each other. And that makes something powerful. An advantage just from being on the inside. At a global scale, the network moves differently. It doesn't think in borders. It doesn't wait for permission. Capital can shift across countries almost instantly, from one market to another, from risk to safety, from decline to opportunity. While most people are still reacting, the network is already positioning. Opportunities are seen early, shared quickly, and acted on together. They are coordinated. Coordination multiplies power, and that kind of coordination is something individuals simply cannot replicate. No matter how skilled you are, no matter how informed, because the advantage is not just knowledge, it's being part of something larger than yourself, and being inside that system means something else. Access to institutions, to capital, to decision makers, and most importantly, access to narrative. The stories you hear on TV, the headlines you read, the opinions of economists, universities, analysts, social media, fund managers. Influence flows through all of it. And when you can influence how people see the world, you can influence where money flows. And you rely on what is broadcasted, you listen, you compare, you try, rationally, to decide. Maybe even with a little intuitive skepticism. But here's the problem. Markets don't move on data, they move on how that data is interpreted. And when interpretation is shaped, capital follows. Money doesn't flow to what is true. It flows to what is believed. So here is the thing to be aware of. If you are outside that network, you are not just missing information, you are reacting to it late. If you are outside that network, you don't shape the story, you live with its consequences. You react to moves you didn't see coming. You adjust to decisions you didn't make. And by the time it reaches you, the advantage is already gone. Because network is not control, it is advantage, subtle, invisible, but decisive. It doesn't force outcomes, it tilts them. And over time, those small advantages compound until they no longer look small at all. Network is not control, it is advantage. Enter Morgan, coordination. In 1907, the financial system began to break down in the USA. Banks failed, credit tightened, liquidity vanished. There was no central bank, no system to stabilize panic, no structure to coordinate response. Markets didn't collapse all at once, they froze. Then one man stepped in, John Pierpont Morgan. Morgan didn't see fragmentation as freedom, he saw it as risk. In the crisis, Morgan brought together the most powerful financiers of his time in his private library. Not to compete, but to decide. When you look inside Morgan's library, you don't just see a room full of books, you see a room where the modern world was negotiated. Not just who would survive and who would collapse, but how the system itself would continue. Because what happened in rooms like that didn't just decide outcomes, it defined the rules. Rules about money, about trust, and about you, about who gets saved and who is left behind. And once those rules are set, everything else follows. Markets, institutions, even belief. And that's the part you never see. Because by the time the story reaches you, it's no longer a decision, it's already reality. Balance sheets were examined in that room that night. Capital was allocated. Decisions were enforced. Banks were supported. Confidence was restored. And slowly, the system stabilized. Morgan demonstrated something critical. In moments of crisis, survival depends on coordination. Today the system is faster, more connected, more complex. But the foundation hasn't changed. Scale still dominates, networks still move capital, coordination still stabilizes crises, and they all work together. In 2008, the system did not collapse. It was stabilized, but not evenly. The system survived by concentrating power. And in the next crisis, these forces will not disappear. They will intensify. Scale will grow. Networks will tighten. Coordination will act faster. And you are in none of them. The system will not fail. It will adapt. The question is not survival. It is, who benefits? Because systems don't survive by chance. They survive by design. If you liked the video, do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more.